Employees at an escape room. What was the weirdest things you've witnessed through the cameras? Story 1. I was an assistant manager for 2 years. We had 2 rooms. An intro room, which was dorm room themed and fairly easy, and another which was a 2-party room about breaking out of jail and then trying to prove your innocence. You could escape the room without proving your innocence. These are some stories. So in the dorm room, we one time had a dad come in with his wife and family and wanted to do a room. The kids are like 6 and 8 or something. Well, they did bad. Like, really bad. Any way they could get something wrong, they did. They refused to use hints and didn't want us giving any. So they failed badly. The dad was grumpy the whole time through the room, and at the end, the kids asked if they could get ice cream. He responded with, "Ice cream is for winners." And they left soon after. Also in the dorm room, we had a puzzle that utilized a map to create a number, and one of the places is Reykjavik, Iceland. The amount of people I heard unable to pronounce that or even find it on a map, it was a general theme with people. The jail room was another thing. Like most jail rooms, the bars did something. Just a general theme, guys. You do a jail escape room, check the bars first. We had a woman on a date once, a very attractive woman with an older man. Well, in order to escape the cell you start in, you need to use the broom to grab a key and unlock the door. The standard old jail escape ploy. Well, this woman decided to climb through a bar that raised about 2 feet. She did it while wearing handcuffs and nothing under her black dress. I happened to be the only person there, and I was shocked. First and only time that ever happened. I don't think she realized we could see that well on the cameras and didn't seem to be bothered by it. Man, I could go on and on with these stories, especially about the jail, but I'm on mobile and it takes forever to type. Edit, spelling is hard on mobile. I have never really done an escape room in person myself. I know there are a lot of escape room games on PC and the like, but there's just something about being together in the room physically that I think I'm missing out on. And situations like this, for example. Story 2. I worked in an escape room for around 4 years. There have been many weird and confusing things I've seen, not including the extreme amount of Karens who demand refunds when their babies don't escape before the time ends. I have a top 4. An older teenager, probably 16 or 17, peeing on the floor. We tell all members that the front door is open and they're free to leave for the bathroom, etc. Hid in the bathroom for an hour waiting for her mom to pick her up. Watching a man take off a concerning amount of clothes and run around the room with a prop tied as a bandana around his head. Heard and possibly witnessed a divorce of a couple arguing over a 2-player game. "You're bloody useless. Then why did you marry me if I'm so incompetent?" "Well, I didn't think you were 5 years ago." And lastly, my favorite / the reason I quit my job. A light bulb in one of our rooms stopped working. Instead of pressing the call button, he decided he could fix it. I don't know how, because all we needed was to replace it with another bulb. But anyway, this guy then pulled out every single wire in the game, thousands of dollars of work and time to build, and then complained that it was our fault because we made his room faulty. But all in all, working there wasn't too bad. I thoroughly enjoyed the bachelorette parties that would joke and laugh. Also, the proposal in one of the rooms will always be my favorite day of work. Edit. I might also add that one of our franchised escape rooms had a guy take a massive dump on the floor for no reason whatsoever. Also, vomit is a common occurrence, but most make it to the bathroom, thankfully. Did this person with the light bulb think that the light bulb going out was part of the puzzle? And if he did, Was he able to access hints? Maybe someone could chime in, maybe you're going to break the fourth wall, but just to say, hey, don't worry, the bulb is not part of the room. Don't worry about that. Story 3. My husband, my best friend, and I escape rooms a lot. I have many experience stories. We decided to do one just the two of us, and we're paired with another group of women. They were a bachelorette party, 3 of them, and they were wasted off their butts. Very nice. But it was very wasted. They were all wearing sashes that said Bride Tribe and insisting we all go drinking together after. The amount of times I said, no, we can't just bust down the door was incredible. But the best part was they were oddly helpful. They just kept finding things and bringing them to me. One found a clue because they took a painting off the wall, which I probably wouldn't have ever done. The place was really nice about the whole thing. They gave us a free game for being so chill about the whole thing. And we still got out of the room. My other favorite was a spaceship-themed room we did with a couple of teenagers. The teenagers were great. They were helpful. We solved a code and a section of the table started opening up. Before we can even register what's happening, this boy reaches in and hits what is apparently a big red button. The whole room starts going off, and it's in self-destruct mode. Red lights, siren, the whole bit. The kids lose their minds that we're going to fail the room, yelling at their friend, and the adults are trying to stop laughing long enough to explain that we already knew how to fix it. There was a panel where 2 people turned keys in tandem to stop the self-destruct, as every space movie always has. I will never forget the look on their faces. Absolute total panic. I think it's funny that the bachelorettes were so helpful while they were drunk is just because you are literally thinking outside the box. You're relaxed. You're not really thinking logically or clearly, so you're probably going to do stuff that your sober self is going to let your brain get in the way of yourself to think about. Story 4. I worked at an escape room where the game masters were inside the room with the guests as actors who were in character with the room's theme. We had a zombie room with 2 actors, a doctor and a zombie. The plot of the room was fun. Guests walk in, the doctor would begin a scientific lecture about a virus reanimating dead tissue. While this is going on, the zombie, chained to the wall, chain gets longer every 5 minutes, is snarling. After like a minute, the doctor would have to tranquilize the zombie as preparation for experimentation. Here, the zombie would attack the doctor. Alarms go off, doors self-locks to contain the virus, and now we have an hour to escape or be locked in forever. As the doctor, I would get more and more sick as the hour went by, all while trying to remain studious and terrified at the same time. With about 3 minutes to go, regardless of where the guests were escaping, I'd faint. Usually, everyone stopped what they were doing to gawk, waiting for me to pop back up. This was usually where the zombie in the room would go ham and start chasing people around the room. With the commotion, I'd twitch, and they'd scream each time I did because it added to the confusion and chaos. I actually made someone pee themselves doing this. With a minute left, I'd pop up in a backbend and start spider walking at people with an Alka-Seltzer tablet foaming out of my mouth. Story 5. Bachelorette party came in and booked the Jungle Temple themed room. They were beyond wasted, and I'm not sure why we even let them play, but whatever. In the first room is a book with some pictures of fertility idols, which were just little Buddha statues. One of the girls went to the bride-to-be and pointed to the Buddha and said, "Look, it's your fiancé!" And everyone but the betrothed had a good laugh. The bachelorette stood in the corner and Blair Witched it for a few minutes, while one of her friends consoled her. 15 minutes into the game, the one who made the joke had enough of it, I guess, and stormed over and whipped her around and yelled, "It's not that serious. Get over it." Dude got sucker punched by the sash-wearing, tiara-clad Hulk. Straight domed, made a great sound. I look over at the monitor and see them all swirling in a storm of fists. I get up and head over to the phone and call the manager at the front desk, and let her know about the fight club happening in Temple. They continued to fight in the hallway outside the room before moving to the sidewalk outside, giving a great show to the next-door CC's Pizza visitors. Best part is when they stopped smashing their fists into each other's skulls, they came back asking for a refund since they only used a quarter of the time they paid for. If you're ever looking for a job that guarantees good stories, look for escape rooms. People are dumb, and you get to watch them do it. Story 6. I worked at one, but our game masters were in the room as hosts and actors. As the host of the room, my job was to make sure the guests were on the right track and being safe. As an actor, I also had the job of immersing people in the room's environment. I mapped out a Santa/Christmas-themed room where the room host basically acted like Buddy the Elf, and the plot of the room revolved around escaping from Santa's office. There was a key on the Christmas tree taped to a candy cane. The way we hid it, it was one of those things where you didn't see it at first, but once you did, you couldn't unsee it. Some groups found it quickly, while others never did without help. If your group was pleasant, but struggling, I usually sang about candy canes until you caught on. If you really weren't getting it, I'd make a show out of gasping for air and singing it in one breath. If your group sucked, mean, obnoxiously wasted, etc., then you'd get a fun fact about Santa. He can simply glance at any Christmas tree and tell you how many needles there are. I'd then watch the jerks count needles on a pine branch. The highest number counted was somewhere over 300. At that point, they'd ask, "How is that a clue?" I'd say, "Clue? It's just a hobby. Oh, look, a candy cane," and start singing about them. Not an escape room, but I did get to be an actor at a Scream park, one of those theme parks that turns into a Scream park for Halloween, and I got to be this obnoxious clown that got to talk back to people, and I feel this person. It was glorious to be able to be sarcastic to them. Story 7. I don't know if this was one of the weirdest, but my friends and I turned off the escape room. There was a box on the wall with a pinhole in it. In a chest, we found a hat. On the hat was a hat pin. The hat pin fit perfectly into the hole in the box. Inside the box was a big red switch. We flipped the switch. Suddenly, every single secret door opened, the light turned on, the video projector switched from showing spooky words to showing a Windows desktop, and the music and sound effects all stopped playing. It was very confusing. About 2 minutes later, one of the employees came in shaking his head in disbelief. Apparently, we found the kill switch and turned the whole thing off. He had to reset the entire room and then perform the actions in order to get the game state back to where we had been before we killed it. This took about 20 minutes. When we were let back into the room, we only had 5 minutes left on our timer. Miraculously, we completed the room with 34 seconds to go. Management has assured us that the hat pin has been removed from the room as a result of our incident. Story 8. Finally, I can jump into one of these. 1. A very obnoxious, wasted group came in to do a room. They signed the waivers, and my boss told me they could play, so I started the orientation. Before they got in, I had to ask one gentleman to put his nearly full whiskey glass in a locker, along with 2 flasks he had in his pocket. When the group got into the room, he pulled out another flask, and his friend took his pants and shoes off. Now at this point, it's like 10:30 p.m., and I just want to go home, so I don't really care. After the game, they asked if there are cameras in the room. I said yes. It was explained to them earlier that there were, but they were too wasted to remember. And they left the building with such speed that it would put a group of elementary school students to shame on the last day of school. 2. So many wardrobe malfunctions. Please wear belts, people. I beg of you. 3. A couple that fought the entire way through the room and decided to break some props even after being told to stop. After the game, they left even when I tried stopping them. You gotta pay for stuff you break. And they had somehow forgotten that I had their phone number, email, and full legal names, so it was pretty easy for police to get a hold of them, especially considering the sheriff's office was not even a kilometer down the street. Story 9. Was in an escape room with some friends and a bunch of strangers. Premise of the room is that you've been kidnapped by a serial killer and you've got to get yourself out of his basement before he comes back. So it's super creepy and gross. A few clues in, we find the key to a 7-foot-tall locker. One of the guys I don't know goes in to open it. I'm standing right behind him. He unlocks it, and just as he reaches for the handle, the door starts to open from the inside. We were so in the moment, he and I just slammed the damn thing shut and held it with our combined weight. We're all asking each other what to do, and there comes a polite knocking from inside the locker. We're all jumpy as heck, but we finally decide to let whoever is in there out. It was the killer, and he was supposed to just jump scare the hell out of everyone and run out of the room. After we all escaped, he told us that had never happened before. He was just standing in the locker trying to figure out what to do. So funny afterwards, but it genuinely scared the hell out of me when it happened. Edit. For those who asked, it was the basement at the Exit Games in Wilmington, North Carolina. Highly recommend their rooms. So clever and well planned. I know a few people that have acted in tourist attraction rooms, not escape rooms, but it was like the prelude for a certain science fiction franchise ride. It's just a lot of mindless repetition of lines and actions followed by things like this, where you have frightful and terrified moments of improvisation, figuring out how the hell you're going to get yourself out of this situation. Story 10. I did one, and I'm partially colorblind. The color I can't see is yellow. Early on, I found and announced the word 8 written on the blinds on the door in white. The last lock was a color/number-based lock. Matched the colors to the numbers. And a hint told us which ones we should have found, including white and yellow. We had 2 white numbers, one we thought was a clue to something else that worked. After 10 minutes, we finally shouted for a hint, and they told us where the yellow was. My friend who requested the hint looked and shouted to us, who checked the 8 on the door beside me, and it turned out it was just me. We hear him shouting, "For hell's sake, how could we forget he's freaking colorblind?" He shouted back to them I was the only one to see it, and I can't see yellow, and we hear them erupting in laughter along with a group during the one next door. We're all laughing, too, by this point. We got out in under 55 minutes. Story 11. I work as an actor in an escape room. Fun fact, only 6% of escape rooms in the U.S. use actors in the room with participants, and one of our rooms has a prop toilet. You can tell where this is heading. Everyone always thinks it's a great idea to get wasted or high, or both, before they go to an escape room. Like that will somehow make you smarter. There were probably 9 participants in the room, and one of those old guys had to pee so bad but didn't want to say the safe word to be let out of the room. He thought he was being sneaky and went over to the toilet to take a pee, but even when it doesn't look like it, we're paying attention to the entire room. Luckily, I caught him before he whipped it out and took a pee. He was then escorted out of the room. He then spent the next 10 minutes trying to knock the door in to be let back in. Where the other employee was, I don't know. They didn't even solve the room. Story 12. Nothing really earth-shattering here. The strangest thing I can think of is this one time the guest skipped every clue and happened onto the final solution to escape the room in the first 5 minutes. As I was heading towards the exit of the room to offer them a steep discount for completing the room on record time and seeing if they wanted to try another room, I overheard the guest starting to unravel the mystery backwards from the end point. Seeing them sound so excited and into the mystery, I walked back to my station and saw them solve every puzzle backwards in record time. After they got out, we shared some laughs over what happened, then traded a free coupon for their next visit if they told me how they unraveled everything so we can run it as a new scenario. I think this is cool. I think it's really great that this guy, even though he stumbled upon the solution, he really wanted to solve puzzles and went back and went through everything. It's like those people that go through video games and have to explore every nook and cranny and collect everything and do every activity. Pretty cool. Story 13. Had 2 groups who had never met each other before the game come in. One group had a girl and the other group had a guy. They clearly hit it off, and instead of playing the game, they left the room to go to the bathroom one at a time. They thought I wouldn't notice, but whatever, they're adults. 15 minutes of their hour go by. They still haven't come back. I had a coworker go check in the single-person bathroom while I focused on the rest of the group, and sure enough, you can hear the head through the walls. Coworkers knock and say she needs to use the restroom, and the girl says she's almost done. Girl comes out and goes back to the room. The guy never comes back. She's upset she didn't get his number, but we all just assume her BJ game wasn't worth a second go-around.
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 14. My cousin went through an escape room with his friends and was solving the puzzles at an alarmingly quick rate. They were told the entire escape process would take anywhere around 60 to 90 minutes. Well, they were finished in 10 minutes. The coordinator running the room was floored and told them this was the quickest she'd ever seen someone escape. Thinking they were cheating, she went into the room. Well, whoever the employee was that cleaned up the escape room before them left the answer key behind. So my cousin and his friends had found the answer key, and it still took them 10 minutes to escape the room. They got a refund and were asked to please try again. Story 15. I'm not an employee, but one of my most memorable experiences was in an escape room. My friend and I had been in the room for almost an hour and were just about to open what seemed to be the final safe. As we were opening it, we heard very loud footsteps coming downstairs from outside the room, heading our way. We all screamed and scrambled to open the safe. The safe is finally open, and in it sat a ring box. Just as my then boyfriend and now husband came into the room, he got down on one knee and proposed, and it was honestly the most romantic thing that has happened to me. He had planned everything ahead of time with the escape room operators. Story 16. Not a worker, but went to an escape room with my boyfriend, pre-gaming heavily beforehand to do an escape room in Brooklyn by ourselves a random Sunday early evening. He has a habit of being able to fall asleep immediately regardless of where when wasted, and unfortunately, this particular room had a bed. The people were very nice and offered to just refund us when he fell asleep on the bed, freaking immediately. I was embarrassed, wasted, mad AF, determined, and tried to solve the clues for about 30 minutes before I gave up and asked to be let out. There was almost no one else there, so I'm sure it was a hoot/cringe to watch. Kudos to them for still offering the refund when we left, but I was beyond mad. Story 17. I used to own an escape room. By far, the weirdest thing was a group that came, maybe 18 to 22 years old. They seemed nice, albeit a bit nerdy. We were chatting while they signed their waivers, and one of them asked if they could put on their capes. Of course we said sure, and they disappeared for a few minutes before returning wearing full-on superhero capes and plastic swords. They unironically played the entire escape room role-playing superhero knights. To each their own, I guess. Good for them for being themselves, but was very weird. Story 18. I did an escape room with my middle school friends once. There were 7 of us. We were all stupid, so we took way too long to figure out the puzzles, but it probably didn't help that every member of the party was handcuffed right after entering the room and we couldn't find the key. In the last 20 minutes of the game, we started getting desperate, and our game master told us that if we could do something to impress him, he'd give us another hint. We made a human motorcycle. It was just us piled on top of one another and rolling around on the ground. We got the extra hint. Story 19. The story that comes to mind is a group of Swedish construction workers who genuinely thought the solution to the puzzle was to lift the door off its hinges. Although a more common experience would be explaining to customers that the games aren't as fun when intoxicated, and then have them complain that the game was way too hard, that stopped when we started adding a histogram of every player's score on the souvenir photos, and their embarrassing times were way longer than average. Story 20. So there was this group of 5 or 6 teenagers in this one room, and at some point, when they open a secret door, the lights go out, making it almost pitch black in there. Now the cameras we look through obviously changed to using IR light, and I immediately see 2 of them go in a corner and start making out. So yeah, pretty weird having to see that while their friends less than 2 meters away are oblivious to what their friends were wasting their time on. Story 21. Not an employee. While looking for a key, I put my hand in a box and pulled out a stuffed rat tied to a cord. I was convinced this was important, stuck my fingers up the rear in the stuffed toy's butthole and started yanking out its stuffing, convinced I'd find a key, a clue, something. I was quickly warned over the phone by an employee that the rat was just part of the set and to please leave it alone. Too long didn't read? Got in trouble for fingering a toy rat at an escape room. Story 22. Honestly, most of the odd stuff that happens is because us employees forgot to reset one part of the room. The worst was when this new employee reset a room for the first time by himself. He locked all of the locks, but never actually locked the door of each safe to itself. So the customers were able to open everything like there were no locks at all. He eventually became assistant manager at our store. We were desperate. Story 23. One of my friends works for a mobile escape room, like a double-wide trailer that moves around for various festivals, and he told me that before he started working there, an extended Christian family had arranged a fun outing, and the owner of the business had family-friendly versions that they approved of. I don't recall what the scenario was, but at one point, the family were so heavily divided, one stabbed the other with a pocket knife. My friend told me that he had to cover shifts where the employee who was working that night had to go to trial as a witness. Story 24. Not an employee, but my family had an escape room where on one side of a wall there was a key in a maze and the other side had a magnet. You were supposed to work together, one person calling out instructions for the maze and the other navigating the magnet. My dad spent half an hour just playing with the magnet, successfully finishing the maze himself. When we finished the room, the employee came out and told us he never saw anyone do the maze on their own. Story 25. We did an escape room for my friend's hen do. Was a bank heist one. Being the smallest of the group, I was made to go into the crawl space with the safe while they told me which flags were the code to crack it. Apparently, I'm not very good with flags anyway, and even worse when I'm on the spot because I ended up screaming, "What the frick is Poland?" just as we ran out of time. Employees were struggling to hold back the laughter when we came out, and I had several very mad friends glaring at me. Story 26. Not an employee, but my significant other's old neighbor who worked at an escape room, and we went to try it out. It was a lot of fun, but we finally got the lock off this big wooden door for access into the second half of the room, and for some reason, neither of us decided to try the door. We kept looking for clues for around 10 minutes until over the walkie, the guy straight up told us to pull the door, and you can tell he was sick of it. Story 27. My husband and I did an escape room a couple months ago for the first time. It was serial killer themed, so when we took the blindfolds off, we were chained in a dirty, dimly lit bathroom. After getting free, we picked up this super dim toy lantern that flickered to be creepy. We crawled around the room gathering tools and sharing this tiny flickering lantern. We solved about 4 puzzles in 40 minutes before discovering they had left us flashlights on a table to use. Story 28. My mother and her friends went to an escape room one night for a girls' night out, and while they were solving the room, one of them elected to just fiddle around with the final lock on the door, which was a 4-digit code, and miraculously unlocked it and walked out. Story 29. I went to a place with my family, and while we went into our room, we saw some employees working on fixing another room. Apparently, someone from a group before us decided the only way out was to shoulder charge the door, which wasn't all that strong, and rip the entire thing out of the frame. I guess they technically succeeded. Story 30. There was a room with a bed in it. Instead of continuing to follow the clues, 2 guests proceeded to put themselves to bed and then take a nap for half the time. They weren't hurting anyone, so I let it happen. Before they left, they remade the bed and tucked 2 of our skeletons inside. Story 31. Best escape room story I ever heard was someone flying home for Thanksgiving while his sister had persuaded their parents to try out an escape room together. They arranged it with the staff, so he was waiting for them in the second room. Not that crazy, but a fun story. Story 32. This is not super relevant to the question, but a few years ago I went to an escape room to meet a Tinder date for the first time. He had paid for the session online and told me to get there at 7. He just didn't show up. I ended up completing the escape room with one of the employees there because she felt bad for me and the session was already booked. Story 33. I had a girl pee herself in one of the rooms. It's important to note that our escape rooms aren't meant to be broken out of. You have a set objective in the room, so the doors are not locked. She could have left the room at any time, she just chose not to. I never got a chance to ask her why, as they left relatively quickly. Story 34. Not an employee, but when I went to an escape room, we had to do it in the dark. There was a box on a wall with circle cutouts, and I, just not knowing what I was looking for, kept pulling my arm back and screaming because I felt something fuzzy. Honestly, after getting out, I laughed at myself because I probably looked so silly for being scared to feel around in a box. Story 35. I asked an escape room employee this one. Our room had a big metal safe. One guy who played in that room just picked it up and carried the safe around the entire time. Story 36. Someone dug through 6 tons of sand on the floor to follow a live electrical cable, which she then tried to chew through. Edit. This was after being told multiple times there were no clues under the sand. Story 37. There was an episode of Impractical Jokers where Sal was the loser, and his punishment was that he had to pee his pants while in a locked escape room. I would guess that the employees were in on it, but the other people in the escape room definitely weren't. Story 38. We had a group that, within about 30 seconds, worked out the code because one of the guys figured out a clue from the first 2 sentences from the video. They were mad. Story 39. The group of guests managed to pull an entire twin bed, mattress, frame and all, through a tiny passageway and into the final room through the secret door. They thought it would be part of the puzzle. It was not. Story 40. I had someone throw money in my face because we didn't take cash. He said we legally had to and tried to convince me to keep it for myself. I don't know why he wanted to part with his money so badly. He had already paid for the game and just wanted a t-shirt. Story 41. I built one for the guys who made Sherlock. Reading the other answers here, you can imagine what the early stages of being open were like, with both idiot customers and staff who were still getting used to everything. Story 42. A couple broke up in the room I was running. I then gave them loads of hints so they could get out as soon as possible. Story 43. I'm not an employee, but once my friend saw a kid try to suffocate another kid with a blanket in the escape room. Story 44. Yeah, this one guy literally walked in and kicked the door down and walked through. His friends and I just stood there like, okay then. Story 45. The hole in the wall isn't part of the game. Someone yesterday tried to escape by digging a hole into the wall even though we're on the first floor, is what they told us before we entered. Story 46. Didn't know this was a thing. I wouldn't do it in a million years. By minute 5, I'd be convinced I would never get out of there alive. Kind of anxious just writing about it. Story 47. That's a really ambitious, not safe for work tag. Story 48. Feel like it's gonna be spicy time. Story 49. Can't wait for the explosive diarrhea episode. Story 50. No serious flag? Oh boy. Story 51. Probably someone that actually escaped. These things are hard.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.